Let's make a delicious juicy meatloaf. To start, I'm going to start by making a panade. I know that's a big word, but all it is bread that is soaked in milk. Now I am using some day-old homemade bread, well, more than a day-old homemade bread, that is kind of a little more crumbly and dry. This is about a firm packed cup of bread that I've just torn into bite-sized pieces. Now we are going to add a half a cup of milk, and that's what makes it a panade. The reason I am doing a panade for this meatloaf is because a panade will help keep your meatloaf moist, and it will also keep it very tender. So you want to mix that around and then set it to the side so that your bread will soak up all that milk. Now in this bowl we have 2 pounds of ground beef. You can use a mix of meats. I prefer just to use solely ground beef. Now I am using 85-15, 100% grass-fed, but I do not recommend anything lower than an 80-20. If you do go lower than an 80-20, you're going to run the risk of your meatloaf being a brick of greasiness, and you don't want that. So with that, I have 1/4 cup of ketchup and 2 large eggs. Now I'm going to season this up. Now don't go too heavy. I will teach you a little trick in a minute. Now you want some salt, some pepper, and I usually throw in just a little bit of granulated garlic just to add a little bit of flavor, but don't go crazy with it. This isn't meatballs. Now the next little trick is, I personally love onion flavor in my meatloaf, but I don't love the crunchy onion bits if it does not fully cook, and you're not guaranteed that the onion will fully cook. So you can either add granulated onion, or you can do this, which is I grate the onion on the large side of my box grater. This is about a small onion grated, and the thing about grating it will all cook, and also because of the fact that it will all cook and because it's grated, the onion juice will also make your meat extremely tender. Now you can use a spoon, but I gotta be honest with you, there's really no other way to mix a meatloaf than with your hands. So I'm going to give it an initial little mix before I add the panade, just to kind of get those eggs broke up and mixed in just a little bit before I add the panade. Now if you don't like the feel of raw meat on your hands, you may want to use some gloves. With making meatloaf, there's no substitute for your hands. Now I'm going to add the panade. Now it's nice and soaked up all of the milk, and the bread is nice and gushy, and it's going to help keep your meatloaf from compacting so much, and it's going to keep it nice and tender because of that. Between the onion juice, because if you don't know, onions are very acidic, so when you grate them like that, they release a lot of juice. Well, that juice is extremely acidic. Acid helps break down the things in meat that makes them tough, so it will make your meat very tender. So you've got 2 things in here that is going to make for a very tender meatloaf. Now yes, this is going to make a very large meatloaf, but I have never met a single person who does not love meatloaf sandwiches the next day. And if you don't love meatloaf sandwiches the next day, something's wrong with your head. Now you want to make sure everything's mixed in really well, that you're not seeing little pieces of egg, that you're not seeing little pieces of the panade here and there, that everything is mixed in really well. Now let me teach you a trick, because there's nothing more disappointing than thinking you're going to get a nice flavorful bite of meatloaf and you taste it and it's completely flavorless because you haven't seasoned it enough. So here's a little trick. Take you a little glob of meat, about like this, and you will take this little glob of meat and you'll either put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds to a minute until it's done, or you will fry it in a pan until it's done. Then you can taste it and see if you need more seasoning. That way you know your meatloaf is going to be delicious instead of bland. And if you taste it and it needs more seasoning, add more seasoning of whatever you think it needs. And if you feel like you need to taste it again, do another little patty. Okay, I tasted it and I felt like it needed just a tiny bit more salt and pepper, so I went ahead and added that and mixed it in. Now we're going to load this into a standard size loaf pan that I have lined. Now I line mine because it makes for easier cleanup, because meatloaf can make a pan really, really greasy. So this makes for easier cleanup. So I've lined it with foil and with parchment because it makes for much easier cleanup. Now, you can just half the ingredients that I've told you to put in here and make a smaller meatloaf. But like I said, indulge in some meatloaf sandwiches. Push it in really good. Make sure it's nice and firm in there, because you don't want any holes in your meatloaf. Because if you've left any spaces, it's going to leave holes, and those holes can lead to cracks, and your meatloaf can get all broke apart instead of staying together in one meatloaf. Now I gotta go wash my nasty hands. Now let's make a topping. I know some people just do ketchup. To me, it's better with this topping. This topping makes it delicious. Do not skip on this topping. I have about a cup to a cup and a fourth of ketchup. Depends on how much topping you want to make. I have 2 tablespoons of mustard and a fourth of a cup of packed light brown sugar. Now you want to mix all that together. Break up the lumps in your brown sugar. This topping makes a meatloaf absolutely delicious. If you have only ate it with ketchup on top, or even with no topping on it and just doing gravy with it, try it this way. This will change your view of meatloaf. Now we are going to take about half to 3/4 of our topping. I usually do about 3/4 of my topping. And you're going to spread it out all to the corners, all over it. It will leave just a little bit, and you will come in at about the half-hour bake mark, and you will put the rest of that on there to let it finish up. But right now, this is going to go into a 350-degree preheated oven, and it's going to bake until the juices run clear, which usually takes about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, depending on how thick your meatloaf is. This beauty is out of the oven, and you can actually see juices running everywhere because I just took it out of the oven. About the 45-minute mark, I put the rest of the topping on it and let it bake. It baked for between an hour and an hour and 15 minutes. To be oddly specific, mine baked for exactly an hour and 5 minutes until the juices run clear. Or if you're not sure about that, you can temp it with a meat thermometer. You want it to temp around 160, and that's when it's perfectly done. You want to let this sit for just a few minutes to let the juices redistribute and everything before you try to take it out of the pan. I will take it out of the pan and slice it for you and show you just how juicy it is. Now I'm going to slice into this and show you just how juicy and tender it is. I can hear it squirting juice already.
Oh yeah, you can hear it.
See, look
awesome.
Look at that juice running.
It's in there for you.
Jason, get in there and show them all that juice running out of there.
Let's see. Looks good.
As far as going. When I push on it with a knife, look at all the juice.
Oh, you can see it, that thing.
That is gorgeous. Always juicy, always tender if you do those little tricks.
Yeah.
We are going to serve this up with some mashed potatoes and peas. One of our favorite suppers of all times, but it will go good with anything.
It'll be a great meatloaf sandwich tomorrow night.
And it will be an amazing meatloaf sandwich tomorrow.
Yep.
So remember, come back next time to Angelakayskitchen, where I take you from gourmet to everyday and everything in between. God bless.
Yeah, beautiful meatloaf. Like, awesome. This is going to be a great bite, y'all. Perfect. Absolutely perfect meatloaf. And honestly, yeah, I'm a bit spoiled. I don't expect nothing less because that's just what Angela does. Beautiful, juicy, flavorful meatloaf. So stinking delicious. Angela K can really cook some meatloaf, y'all.